Hey everyone, I'm Justin from Mockingbird Farmstead. In this video I'd like to share with you the spring planting tool that we use here at the farm. First, let me say that this is based on the spreadsheet originally created by Patrick Dolan of 1 Yard Revolution. His YouTube channel has been an inspiration to me, and if you're a home gardener, I would consider it mandatory viewing. I haven't seen any activity from Patrick online in going on about a year now, and the spreadsheet he originally posted hasn't been updated in 4. It's a simple to use, freely available spreadsheet. Links to his original and my updated versions are below. The kinds of changes I've made are aimed at adding some functionality to help consolidate much of my notes and seed information into one place and to allow me to more easily manipulate the data on the sheet. It may seem overwhelming at first, but I assure you it's a simple to use and simple to customize tool. It's been my only planting tool for the last 4 years at the farm. If you'd like to follow along, now's a great time to pause, head into the description, and download your copy of the spring planting tool. First, when you follow the link, you can't edit the spreadsheet as you see it. You need to make a copy, and here's how. Go into File, Make a Copy, and you can then name and save it however you would like. Now you have your own copy, and you can edit it as you see fit. None of it is locked, so you can completely customize it. I'm not a Sheets or Excel pro, I just used a few simple tricks. It's ready to use as is, but the real power comes from the ways you can change it to suit your own needs. I'm a visual person, and so I like to be able to see info presented about complex systems at a glance, and it helps me keep track of the bigger picture in my mind. Therefore, we may find multiple versions of the same information on the chart, sometimes in a granular form, sometimes aggregated into a simpler visual form. So let's take a look. Starting at the top, we have our header. Feel free to delete, put your name, your garden name, your logo, whatever you'd like. Just under there, we have a number of kinds of things before we get to the main table. So from the left, we have the types counter. V stands for vegetables, and it keeps count of how many of those we have. F is flowers, and H is for herbs. They count the number of V's, F's, and H's in column F below. Next, we have a table displaying the total of all types from the counter, the total number of varieties of those types. For example, tomatoes would count as one type, but there are, let's say, 6 varieties being grown at the plot. This gives that total and is found in column E. And then the total number of flat sign planting totaled from counts in column D. Next is a PE, and that's above the week where our Persephone period ends. The Persephone period, coined by Elliot Coleman, is the time of year where hours of daylight per day fall below 10. Here at my latitude, it ends on January 20th. It's a time when many plants start to awaken, even from under cover. Next, we can see the current week and next week format boxes. I simply have these here to mark columns to let me know where we are. I use the Format Painter tool to color columns as we move along. I used a trick to make sure that even if you format paint over the columns, it won't remove the planting date colors. I'll explain when we get to the table below. Next to those format boxes, we have the past week format box. It's the same as the current and next week, but it's to visually close off weeks past. Below that is the days to go box. It's for those days I'm peeking at this tool in November and December and aching to get those seeds in the dirt. We have the missed box. If at any time I miss a planting, I don't get seeds, seedlings fail for some reason, or life happens and a crop that would be nice to have doesn't make the cut like crops we need to have do. Anywhere on the document you type an X, it'll mark that and stick out like a sore thumb. And this box tracks all those X's. I mean, who hasn't bought more seeds than they ever could possibly plant in a year? Come on. Below that is today's date, just to keep it handy and as a reference for the days to go box. And then we have the first crucial tool on this sheet. It's the last frost date box. When you put the date in there for your specific growing region, it automatically updates the week dates for the table below. It won't work for you unless you do this first. And lastly, before we get into the table, we have the Start Seeds color code box. A yellow box indicates when to start seeds indoors. An orange box means overlap between a week you could start indoors or start outdoors under single cover. Red indicates starting seeds under single cover or transplanting out under single cover. Purple denotes an overlap between planting out under single cover or planting out or seeding out and setting out without cover. The purple overlap will require you to pay attention to the week's temperature forecast. The blute denotes when it's generally considered safe to direct sow outside or to transplant out without cover. Always keep an eye on your forecast though, remember, it's just a guide. Conditional formatting. Before we go on, the one basic trick I use to make much of this spreadsheet happen is called conditional formatting. And basically, it's when you tell Sheets or Excel to change the appearance of something based upon the information that thing contains. And you can control where it looks to check for your conditions, what the information it's looking for looks like, and what to do with it if it finds it. For example, on any row below any of the week columns, if in a cell you enter exactly I, all lowercase, no spaces, it will change the color of that cell background to yellow and the text to match, making the I's appear invisible. The codes to create the other colors on the table are located in the Start Seeds color code box. This creates data in cells instead of just changing their colors. We can leverage the presence of this data to do things like count and sort the table and maintain those colors while we format around them, like marking current week or next week in pink or mint. That's the gist of conditional formatting and why we're using it. After we go over the tools in the spreadsheet, I'll show you how to make your own adjustments. The table heading. Again, from left to right, we have our bird icon above O, S, F, V, and T in columns B, C, D, E, and F. O in column B is for ordering status. Hovering over the O gives a bit of info about different codes. These codes simply need to be entered, and conditional formatting will change them automatically for you. The S column is for tracking the suppliers. You can come up with your own abbreviations. I find simpler is better. F is the number of flats I planted, tracked in a box above, as mentioned earlier, as is number of varieties in column E. In column F, we have the types of crops and their codes. Conditional formatting will automatically update them for you too. Starts totals all of the number of things we could potentially seed in that week. Weeks left shows how many weeks are left until our last frost, and the date shows the date of that particular week. You can change the day the week starts on by changing the last frost date forwards or backwards by a few days, so the date falls on the day of the week you want your week to start. Now on to the body of the table. We've already gone over all the columns already, but just a review. Column B is the ordering status, column C is the seed supplier, column D is the number of flats planted, column E is the number of varieties of that type of crop, column F is the type of crop. Column G is where all the crops are listed. The columns to the right of that, the main body of this table, shows sowing and planting windows for each respective crop. The bulk of this information is from the original spreadsheet, which is based on multiple sources like Farmer's Almanac, Johnny's, various books, and seed producers. My default when adding new crops is to lean on the seed producers' recommendations. They are, after all, motivated to ensure your satisfaction and success, so I just trust the packet. So let's pick an example and take a look. Let's pick pumpkins. Pumpkins are great to start a few weeks before last frost, but are tender and can suffer from severe damage with late frosts, so we need to keep them protected until we know it's safe. If we look at the color blocks that show what our planting schedule looks like, we can see all of that information clearly reflected. We can start them indoors about 3 weeks before our last frost, plant them out or direct seed with protection the week before through 3 weeks after our last frost, and they're safe to plant out 3 to 4 weeks after our last frost unprotected. Remember, this is a guide. We understand as growers that weather is unpredictable, so use common sense. Keep an eye on the weather forecast and do right by your seeds. If the planting tool says it's safe to plant out cucumbers, but 6 inches of snow are in the forecast, trust the forecast, not the tool. Lastly, let's talk about how to make this your own. If you have some experience with spreadsheets, this is likely not going to be terribly useful, but I'll go through my process for adding and adjusting entries and how I implement the worksheet, which may be useful. First things first, I make a blank copy to save as an original. That way I always have a clean copy somewhere. You can just choose make a copy, like when you originally started working on the planting tool. Okay, so during a normal year, I dust this off around December and start my planning, because that's what works for me. I check my notes from the previous season and make any adjustments. Maybe I planted this seed too early and it became root bound before it was safe to transplant it out, or maybe this crop has too many problems in this growing region, or maybe a crop did well but it's too much hassle. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. If I wanted to delete the entry completely, I'd select the row and choose delete row. I like to keep records of these things, so I built a code into column B, the stock column, an X. Let's say there's a new crop we'd like to try. Here's how we'd add one. You can use an empty row at the bottom of the table or select any row within the table and select insert one below or above. This will keep the general format of the table's colors and format and update all the formulas and conditional formatting. Then we start filling in the info. Let's take an example from a seed packet. Here I have a beautiful milkweed mix from a company called Seed Needs. First, it's on hand, so I go over to the additional info columns on the left. In column B, I put an O for on hand. Column C, I put SN for seed needs. Column D, I put, let's say, 1. Column E, I put a 4 because there are 4 varieties in this mix. In column F, I put F for flower. Maybe you'd like to switch this to a B for beneficials. Then in column G, I'll put Asclepias, but you could put milkweed, swamp milkweed, butterfly weed, whatever you like. It should be whatever you're most likely to remember. Now on to the body. Let's say I have no idea where to start. Step 1 is to check the packet. I flip it over and what do I see? Optional cold stratification. Start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. Okay, great. So on the sheet, I find the column for 8 weeks before last frost, and I'll check the start seeds color code table. The indoors code is 4 I's, so I input I, and the conditional formatting changes it to yellow for me. I had that same code through 7 and 6 weeks, and I now have my indoor seed starting range. The packet says to plant out after the weather becomes warm, and I'll take that to mean safely after the last frost. So I'll head to 2 weeks after last frost, or -2 in the weeks left row. I'll check the start seeds color code for planting out, and it looks like that's 4 O's or OOOO. So there we go. And a trick is that you can take that cell, grab it by the small square, and drag it over to copy it into adjacent squares. Let's say you'd like to change the conditional color formats to better suit your needs. It's easy. Select a cell with the color you'd like to change. Go into Format and then Conditional Formatting. This shows all of the conditional formatting looking at that cell. It's yellow, so let's select that. In formatting style, you can choose the text color and background color. I choose to make them match so the text is invisible. You can change them to whatever you'd like here. They are automatically updated for you in real time. If you want to keep those changes, hit done, otherwise cancel to forget them. Let's say you'd like to add your own conditional formatting rule. In this instance, I'm going to add a range into the table that will allow us to view cold stratification windows, like in our milkweed example. To add a new conditional formatting tool, I'll select the entire table where the stratification information may potentially be displayed. I selected all rows and columns from and including I-12 through the bottom of the spreadsheet up to and including the last row in the last column before our last frost, column U. I then go into Format again, then Conditional Formatting. Go into Add Another Rule. We already have the range we want to have the rule look at selected, so let's go to Format Cells If. Select Text is Exactly. In the value or formula box, you have to pick something sort of specific or unique. If you pick something common, like the number 9 for example, any cell with a 9 in it, in the range, would be subject to the rule. We don't want that. I pick a string of 4 letters I know I'd never encounter otherwise. For the stratification code, I'm going to pick STST, all lowercase, no spaces. The next part is completely up to you and your taste, but I think, for me, best practice would be to pick a color that you feel fits the idea you're trying to convey, and also isn't too similar to other colors you've already picked, because it might get confusing. For me, I think it should be an icy color, so I'm going to go with an icy blue. For some reason, I also like to make the text bold, even though you can't see it. I know it doesn't matter. I just like doing it. And when I'm satisfied, I click Done. Now back to the milkweed packet. If we're going to stratify, it recommends doing so 3 to 6 weeks before planting. So we just count backwards on the calendar and start typing STST, just like this. The last thing I do is add to the table above somewhere so I could see for the next time I'd want to add stratification. It's just a simple matter of playing with the formatting to make it fit. And that's all for this video. I hope you found it useful. Always reach out with any questions. All links are provided in the description below. Check out more of our content here on YouTube and follow us on social media at Mockingbird Farmstead. See you soon. Be good.